Getting into your mind, lost in. Hey, everybody, and welcome to Lost in the Groove. Today, we're going to continue staying here in the South. Here I am here in Florida, and we got somebody from Georgia. Got a little spark in the music industry, got a little spark with musical instruments. We got Melissa. So, without further ado, Melissa, who is Melissa? What is your story?
I am the owner of a music school in Atlanta, Georgia, just north of Atlanta. And I get the privilege of inspiring lots of kids and lots of adults to make music and to write songs and to have a good time.
It's awesome. I think it's so cool because as a music school, just the idea of a music school, because being an artist is cool. It has its pros and its cons, and I think one of the biggest cons is fitting in. It's because you're creative and you want to express yourself, and how are you going to do that? And then here you are, you've got a music school to allow all of these people to come together. It's just, I don't know, that's just incredible.
It is a wonderful job to have, and we just like spent last week doing one of our rock camps, and that's what you see lots of kids who maybe don't fit in with the athletes at school or the smart kids at school or the theater kids at school that are looking for someone to hang out with, and they get to come here and find other guitar players and other drummers and other vocalists who want to sing rock and roll, and we get to put them together and they find these relationships that are just fantastic to watch.
It's a great way of really building skill and more deeper emotion, especially with younger kids, especially teenagers. Because come on, we both were teenagers, and we know the crazy shenanigans and things, but the amount of knowledge and experience that you get as a teenager and as a kid and growing up, having those outlets and resources to be able to just do something you want to do. Not stupid homework, not your mom or dad telling you what to do. Nah. I want to play my electric guitar.
And that's exactly what we're trying to encourage them to do. And it gives them confidence. It gives them, the ability to stand up in front of others and to advocate on their own behalf. It really gives them a lot of tools that they can use when they get older and they go out into the world that you don't see ways to get them out other way, elsewhere.
Right.
It's all about, let's get this paper done, let's study for this test, let's pass this next exam. That's what they're focused on. But when they come here, they get to focus on, how can I express myself? How can I be creative? How can I be my true self in this environment?
I feel it's a hot topic right now because there's a lot of things going on with parents and kids in schools with current issues. But I think the biggest thing that's not brought up is the fact that we are raising human beings. We were evolved in a natural world of predators and learning on how to survive. And now we're in a world where we have all of these things at our fingertips, but we still don't try to create a type of education for those that, let's be realistic, stuffing a kid in a classroom for 8 hours is not very creative or very influential for a lot of children. Like, some kids need to learn to play instruments. Some kids need to do roller skating. Some kids just need to play basketball. There needs to be more emphasis on this. That's how I feel.
Oh, I absolutely agree. The children that we see, and I say children, but we see adults too, who are working their 9 to 5 job, and then they need that outlet, and they're coming to us as well. But putting putting kids into a classroom and never giving them that opportunity to express their creativity is killing creativity. Whether it's, making music or making video games or art or whatever their creative space is, this just happens to be the one that we work in.
Right. It's all about creating, new development, a new expansion, and more possibilities than were before. Because we're not just worker bees.
No, we're not. That's not what most of us were meant to be, and it's amazing watching kids when we like take songwriting. I've got one of my groups that I'm working with right now. I'm encouraging them to write their own music, and it's terrifying for them to start, but it takes so much courage to step out there and say, "Okay, I wrote these words. Now, what do we do with these words?"
Right.
And that they own it, and they take that time to put themselves out there, and that's something that you don't necessarily always get an opportunity to experience, but that builds so much character within them and gives them so much confidence because someone's going to listen to their song and be like, "Wow, that was awesome."
You're not always going to appease everyone with your music. I'm not saying there's bad music. Trust me, there's very bad music. But there's times when you're, like, for example, when you're having for the very first time developing your own lyrics and your own music, that fear of, well, what if they don't like it? You know, and not more emphasis on, well, maybe there are going to be people that are going to like it. And then they're going to like it and they're going to tell other people that they like it. And then they're going to bring those people along. And then before you know it, you're going to have an audience. You're going to have a fan base that wants to hear your creativity and your music. It all,
Absolutely.
I feel it all starts with just a seed. You got to start somewhere, and it goes slowly, but if you don't start, you never know where it's going to go.
No, you have to give them the opportunity to make that first step. And whether they succeed in it or they trip and they fall, it doesn't really matter. It's the fact that they took that step that matters.
Right. Making that first step.
And we some of the music that we teach kids is it, like you said, is so bad. But that's what they want to learn and that's what we want to work on. But we also give them experiences with other music. We do a lot of classic rock here, which not a lot of kids aren't necessarily listening to normally, but they walk out and they're like, "Wow, that band was really cool." And we're like, "Yeah, they've sold a lot of records."
Yeah, but I mean, there are different avenues towards it. For example, you can take there are people that do heavy metal,
Mhm.
and you have that stereotype, but there are people that take it to its creative limits. For example, excessive progression of drumming. You know what I'm talking about. It's mad skill right off the bat. And you have a bassist player that's going from high to low straight off the line. You know, these are skills that people are learning and developing. Yeah, it's not for everybody, true. But just like you said, you take classic rock, you put somebody in there and they hear this music, they're like, whoa, this is wow. Because that's what it does to you. It's the way that the music is being performed and the people that are performing it along with it that just
Absolutely.
you connect with it immediately. I don't know how else to explain it.
No, it's when we did camp last week, we were doing one of our camp rotations was doing some kind of out there classic rock songs, like they did Dream Police and stuff like that. And it's interesting because the kids at the first day of camp were like, "I've never heard of this. This stuff is terrible." And then when we put them in the bands and they started playing the music, they're like, "Wow, this is actually really cool." And it uses a lot of the same aspects that I want to use in the music that I want to play. It's all there. It's just put together a little bit differently. And then by the end of the week, they were like, "These are the best songs I've ever heard."
It's all about changing. It's all about shifting perspective, because a lot of the times we look at it from one side and we don't look at it from the other, and it's just a matter of being able to say, look, you can see it from the other side. Just, you got to know, you have to flip it around.
Absolutely. And something else we tell them is, look, if you want to be a professional guitar player or drummer or whatever, you've got to be willing to play a lot of different kinds of music because, I get paid to sing and I don't love every song that I sing. There are times that I'm handed a piece and I'm like, "Oh, this is awesome." But I'm going to do my best and I'm going to give it everything that I have and make it as good as I possibly can because that's what my job is. And I have the best job in the world. Not many people get to say they do what I do for a living.
Right. It's really interesting because the one thing that artists struggle with the most is being able to be successful as an artist because again, like we said earlier, a lot of people have to work 9 to 5s to make a living. And you don't get to be able to live out your craft and passion, but at the same time I feel that it's slow. You need patience, just the same way you learn a guitar or a piano. You can't expect to learn that thing in a week.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. It takes time and it takes effort and it takes practice and it takes, patience like you said, but you can do it. There's anyone I've ever known who's really put their heart into it. They can do it if they want to. It just takes all of those things to work on it and to get there.
It's also about having the strength because, if you want to make the steps to do this, you want to learn something, you yourself have to be willing to accept it because no one's going to teach you guitar. You can have guitar teachers from today until tomorrow, but if you're not in, your soul is not into it, your heart is not in its place, you're not going to be able to connect with your instrument. It's like I feel it's one of the the key elements that my guitar teacher taught me early on is you have to learn to connect with the guitar and you have to learn to connect with your instrument. And I feel that it's something that you can learn as you progress with your skill and your knowledge with it.
Yeah, and it for people in my job that do what I do, it always comes down to the question of is are you teachable? My I had I have students sometimes that, they say they want it and they talk like they want it and they go to the auditions and they go through the process, but they're not really teachable in that they're going to, spend time doing other things. They're going to read a book or they're going to play a video game or watch a movie or go outside or skateboard or whatever those things are. And those are all perfectly valid ways to pass your time and other perfectly valid interests. But if you really want this, if you really want to be a musician, you have to be teachable and you have to be willing to go to the lengths that need to be reached to get to your goals.
Right. It's so interesting because you yourself are surrounded by music every single day. I mean, you work in a music school and being surrounded by that environment, surrounded by different types of artists, instrumentalists, different levels of skill, struggle, even learning disabilities, I would assume. I, it's just it's hard for me to understand that scope because I haven't experienced that vast amount of exposure to those types of people. How does that how does it change you as an individual trying to explain to other people how you fit in, especially when it comes to music?
Oh, that's a that's a deep question. You know, when I'll I'll tell you a story that'll sort of get you
Sure.
there. I was directing a production. I direct we do big shows. And I was directing a big show many years ago and the dress rehearsal happened to fall on my birthday. And I had kids, I had adults, I had musicians, I had actors, I had all of these parts in this production and we were working on getting through the dress rehearsal and Anybody in production will tell you dress rehearsals always are terrible. It's just a rule. They never go well. And I lost my temper at the end of the day. We had gotten all the way through the show. It went badly, and I just said, "All right, all of you, that was terrible. I really hope it's better the next time because you're going to embarrass yourselves. You're going to embarrass me. This was awful. I can't even put into words how terrible it was. I just want all of you to go home." And they all just kind of stood there and looked at me, very, very uncomfortable. And a friend of mine who happened to be in the show comes up to me and says, "We have a birthday cake and presents for you." I was mortified. I was absolutely mortified. And what that taught me was all of these other people, they're just people. And that I have to remember how I treat them. And I have to treat them with dignity and grace. And I've never lost my temper with anybody since. But what I have learned is I have to adjust the way I say things because not everybody has my background. Not everybody has experienced the things I have experienced. So
Right.
sometimes when I explain something to a student, they don't get it. It wasn't the cast's fault that night that it went badly. It just did. So me yelling at them did nothing other than make me really, really embarrassed a little bit later in the night. So that's that was a really defining moment in my life, and it has since then affected, I do better with, we have a lot of special needs kids that take lessons here. I've done better with them. I've learned the patience. I've learned to change my way of speaking or my way of presenting something for a student that is maybe a little different than the average student, or maybe from a different
Right.
part of the country, or maybe a different part of the world, even that has a different perspective than I do.
Yeah. And it's really cool because in many ways you're able to respect artists. It kind of reminds me of somebody like even Andy Warhol because he was able to surround himself by artists. I'm just using him as an example, but you learn to have that type of respect and kindness and compassion because you understand that, let's be real, a lot of people that are artists and instrumentalists is due to trauma. It's a great way of inducing that pain. I can tell you this as a guitarist personally. That's kind of the reason why I play myself. And just that connection that you can make with people, that feeling and emotion, just being in that room, and the truth is, the universe will come for you no matter what. So bad things happen because bad things happen. Just the way that things are.
Yeah, and who am I when I'm sitting here trying to teach these kids confidence and teach these musicians confidence to then yell at them because something didn't go well. Like that's not that's so counterproductive to what we're trying to accomplish here. And
But
that
you overcome that. You overcame that. The thing is, a lot of people don't say, "Okay, this is what I did," and kind of think it out and restructure it. A lot of people will just continue the same habits and same practices. You know, hence, the old drunk artist. The
right.
one with the bitter drink. There's a reason behind it.
No, you're right. There are stereotypes for a reason. And it does take some effort and some self-awareness. Do when I work with these kids and when I work with these adults, am I am I doing my best to bring them to their best instead of focusing on myself and my ego?
Right. It's being able to humble yourself.
Exactly. And I think creativity has, you have to be able to humble yourself. If you don't, you're never going to, take constructive criticism on your art, and you're never going to improve.
It's kind of funny because the whole idea of being an artist is, for me personally, is constantly learning. When you're constantly learning from people, you're I love to say this, like when you see somebody play guitar and you're like, oh, what's that? And it's like, oh, that's a B chord. Wait, what? Yeah, it's a B flat. It's like, oh, interesting. What does it sound like? Like just by itself. And then you hear the person play, you're like, oh, that's interesting. I want to try that too. And there's a little bit of that. There's also where you see somebody's art, you're like, oh, I like that yellow. Oh, I like what you did there. How'd you do that? It's all about that interactive experience and learning from each other. Maybe something new, maybe something different, maybe something fun. I don't know.
Sure, and I have a student who told me recently that they don't need lessons because they're a professional, and I said, well, a lot of professionals still work with coaches because they need that feedback and they need that experience. And at least for me, I've been doing this a really long time. I still have a teacher that I work with because I need to work with somebody who's going to expose me to new music. She'll bring me a piece of music and say, "Here, try this." And I'm like, "That's not my genre." And she's like, "I don't care. I want you to try it anyways." And then maybe I find something that I didn't realize I was good at or something that I enjoyed. I need that in my life.
Yeah, it's such an important part again about being just a person, because a key factor of humans is we need connection to survive. That's just a fact. Because when you're a person that isolates yourself for very long periods of time, it's not healthy. It's not. Being, and this is the thing about music. Music brings people together. I think that's why music was formed in many ways. That's why instruments were formed in this way, just adding more to that experience. But the sheer fact and effect that it has on people, just the emotions that people feel when music is being played. It's just, I don't know.
Now, especially in today's world, because we're in the world of technology where, we don't talk to each other on the phone anymore, we text each other, and you can't feel the emotion from that. So when we sit down and we listen to a concert and you can feel that emotion, it's teaching the audience about how to feel. Because I don't think a lot of teenagers know how to express that emotion. So music is a great way to do it.
It is. I can say personally, I even remember being younger. I used to love I used to love like Phil Collins and Peter Gabriel. Those were like
Mhm.
my go-tos. And it's just the rawness in a way where how when something's being played, like just the way that somebody's singing, you feel that they're in a room and you could picture them just alone. Like somebody's behind the booth and it's just dark and there's a light just shining down and they're at a microphone and they're singing it. And you could just picture it in your head.
Yeah.
That feeling,
Oh, yeah.
another
Yeah.
it's crazy.
No, it's what music does for us, and you can get it whether you're listening to. I mean, you could be listening to a Beethoven symphony and feel it. You can be listening to a country song and feel it. You can, it's there wherever, however you enjoy listening to whatever you enjoy listening to, you can experience that, and it just takes you to another place.
Have you always been, do you feel like even at a young age, you've always been connected to music like this?
Oh yeah, I I learned how to play. It was called a chord organ. So it's like a little keyboard kind of things, these brown things that they used to
Yeah.
sell door to door in like the 50s or something. My grandmother had one of those, and that's how I first started learning how to play music. And I was very young when I started on that. And bless my parents, they bought me a keyboard. They bought me some books, but they never really gave me lessons until I got into high school because they said, "No, there's no future in music." And so the joke is then when I I bought my first house. My husband and I bought our first house. And he's an artist also. He's a guitar player. The first time they came to my house, I was like, "This is the house that music bought." But yeah, I have always had an affinity for the performing arts and for concerts and for performing.
Yeah. It kind of is almost embedded in actually kind of cool. I've pointed this out before. Do you know the logo, this logo right here, Lost in the Groove? Do you know that's a record?
Okay.
It's a record. The idea of okay, the idea of Lost in the Groove, and this all kind of came about because I have a record player. I have like 300 records. I love like just music's experience and just being surrounded by it constantly, even playing it. But the idea was getting lost in the groove because when you put the needle down into the grooves of the record, it gets lost in these tiny little grooves and it kind of moves around and you start hearing this music. It's like almost magic. You know, the way that just a weird thing that's made out of wood and is hollow and it has these stretched out strings on these things you turn with a knob, or this giant thing with these ivory keys. And all of a sudden, you put somebody there, you have the right mechanisms, the right chords, and voila, you got music.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. No, you're right. It is a I like that analogy, Lost in the Groove. I'm not gonna forget
Yeah,
that. That's cool.
yeah, music embedded. Like the thing is, I feel that it's one of those mental mental locks in our head where we have music in like the darkest of times. We have the music when are at our happiest. You It's like in the back of our head that we just don't realize how much music affects everything, literally everything that you do every single day.
It does, and it affects memory so profoundly. Like, there are songs that, yeah, if you play them for me right now, I can be back in high school in a microsecond. Like, it's like I'm right there. I remember what that was like. I remember that moment. It reminds me of the people that I was friends with then, that maybe I haven't seen for a long time, but it can take you back to an exact moment in time where you heard that song and something important was happening in your world, and now there it is again.
It's kind of incredible that the quantum computer of quantum computers is Mother Nature, it's Earth. And it's developed this thing called sound, where all different types of creatures use sound to communicate, like sonar for dolphins, which is super cool. But it's embedded in like in the known universe is sound. It is one of the main things that we have. You then get to think to yourself that if this is a part of our world and it's a part of us, why do we treat it so poorly sometimes? Why do we treat the way that music is represented as a punishment instead of a privilege? Instead of giving opportunities, you make it less accessible to others.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So often the first thing to go in school systems is music, and that limits the ability for other kids to get to it.
People forget that it's, you know, you could say money is not an issue, but it is because so many God, if you can just think of how many single moms that are out there, how many families are struggling that've got kids. I mean, especially in parts of like the South, especially in the Midwest, talking about all over the country. And you work around parents, you work around adults. You know that these parents want the best for their kids. They want these kids to be happy. But I think the hardest thing can be for a parent is when they can't give that to their kids. because it's just not. It's not. It's not. It. Yeah. It's not accessible.
No, it's we're very blessed. We have an organization that helps us meet the needs of our community. So if we have a student that's in a single parent family household or a low income household or in the foster care system, we do have an organization that helps us provide them with lessons. And that's such a blessing because sometimes for those kids who come in and this might be the only thing they do all week because they have access to it and we are able to provide them access to the lessons and it means so much to them. Like they're so happy to be here and they're so
It's
excited to be
awesome.
here and so grateful to be here. And it's just amazing to watch that that development of those children and what music can do for them.
And it's really awesome to be able to give those opportunities. You see, what is not talked about is stuff like this. It's where we like to look at the broad picture, but the thing is, we have to look at our communities. You cannot put up a facelift and your community is fixed. That's not how it works. The way that you're able to build on your community is when you give back to each other. Is where you're able to support one another and be able to build something from it. That takes work and effort from everyone to come together to make that possible. And it seems like you're doing it. And I feel like if you're able to do it, so many other people can do it as well.
Oh,
It's just a,
absolutely.
it's just a matter of doing it and trying.
No, absolutely. And we don't do it by ourselves. Like I said, we have an organization that helps us. They're a nonprofit that they're called Music for Chief, and they that's what they do is they provide music for at risk and in need teens. But also we had some kids that were in the foster care system, and they weren't able to get into the Music for Chief organization, and we just put an email out and said, "Hey, can anybody help these kids?" And the number of parents who stepped up and said, "You know what? We can donate a couple of lessons." We were able to provide them with lessons for a year and a half to two children.
Nice.
And all
Wow.
it was asking. And that was the group coming together and saying, "We're not willing to let these children go without."
Yeah, it also ties in again where people are saying that, the government is out of control and things are out of control and everything is over. Again, I feel you got to shrink it down. There's so many things that you can do. It's like, who cares what they're doing? It doesn't matter. What matters is what you're doing for yourself. Does it matter what's going on in Wyoming right now for you? No.
No, not for me.
No, doesn't matter. What matters for you is where you live, is the people that you're around, the people that are a part of the community, the people that are coming into your business constantly. It's again just being able to just see things as they are clearly. Change is possible slowly, but it happens if you do something about it. Not where, why aren't they fixing it? Why aren't you fixing it?
No, you're absolutely right. I can complain about the kids who can't get music lessons, but what am I willing to do?
Right. And you did that thing where you reached out and you were able to help out those kids for a year and a half. So it's again, you got to be able to ask yourself this. Are you willing to make that first step? Are you willing to ask? You may get no. That's fine. You have to be willing to accept that no, because there might be a yes. There might be a positive reaction from this.
Yeah, it's that saying, "What's the worst that could happen?" Somebody tells me they can't do it. And you know what? If I don't ask, I'll never know. I'll never know the
Exactly.
answer. And I'll never have these two children may never have the opportunity to come in here. And who knows what they're going to do? They may take guitar lessons for a year and a half or 2 years or 3 years, or they may take it for 6 months and decide, "You know what? This isn't for me. I don't enjoy this." Or they could take it for a long time and, win a Grammy one day. You just don't know where the path ends once we start down it.
Yeah, it's again, it's just giving those opportunities where it's needed, because the thing that hurts people, the thing that hurts individuals more than anything is limitations. The second you start limiting a person's needs, again, we're talking about needs, okay? Mental health is something that is I'm going to say this, it's very frowned upon in this country because nobody cares to talk about the truth about it. Nobody. Seems like no one wants to have an open conversation about, I don't know, you ever heard of physical activity, creative activity? I don't know. There are numerous different things that you can do for your mental health because, again, do you want to be in your 60s and having dementia? I don't.
No, yes, I don't either. And when I look at our opportunities, if you're talking about mental health, we have a saying here. We tell adults that'll come to us and say, "Well, I never played the piano, but I always wanted to." We'll tell them, "Well, this is cheaper than therapy, and it's a great way for you to relax at the end of the day."
I've done both. I've learned both. I've learned a lot from doing being with a person and doing therapy and doing it with instrument. And personally, as an artist, there's a lot of added benefit because there's a lot of things, especially with trauma. It's hard to explain in words. I feel it's just so much easier to do it with a piano, or drums, or want to get a little snazzy, a saxophone.
That's true, and there is nothing wrong with therapy. I didn't necessarily mean to make
No.
it sound bad, but the truth is a lot of us don't take time for ourselves. We work
Yeah.
really hard. We 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 focus on our jobs, and then we come home, and then we've got to clean the house and do the laundry, and there's always something else to do. And so rare is it for someone to sit down and say, "You know what? I've always wanted to play guitar. I'm going to learn." And that escape, for 30 minutes, when you come in here and you're in your studio for 30 minutes with your teacher, you might play guitar for 15 minutes and talk about life for 15 minutes, but it's an escape. You get to do something for yourself for that period of time.
It's your time. It's kind of the idea of, like, with meditation being sound of mind. That's the phrase, sound of mind. It's it's not about being alone. It's just being able to connect with yourself. I know a little bit about brain chemistry and stuff. I'm a master. I just a little bit of a nerd. The way that you can connect to different parts of your brain, to spark different parts of your brain, basically the neurons, to kind of heighten them. These are all healthy exercises. It's kind of like brain fitness, like 24-hour, it's like 24-hour fitness plus brain.
Sure. Sure. It's a and the neat thing about music is music affects both the right and the left side of your brain. So you're able to engage both the creative and the logical at the same time. And that gives you a different perspective on a lot of things. Like math, like music is fractions. And when you look at math, it's just music is just fractions. You're learning to count in fractions using pretty symbols instead of numbers. But then you can take those pretty symbols and create a beautiful piece of music that appeals to the creative emotions.
Yeah. You know what? I actually want to show this as an example. Uh, Fortunately, listeners probably won't see this, but if you're on YouTube, you probably can. So, this is probably the best physical example I can give of what you just said. Like, this this is the creative side of your brain, and this is the logical part. When you're strumming the guitar, this is all logical. This is where all the creativity is coming from. It's from the fretboard.
No, absolutely. That's a great example.
Come on, we're doing a music segment over here. I have to throw something in.
No, that was good. I like that.
But it's just it's just a deeper and more clearer way of giving ourselves the chance to be able to take back our mental health and really be able to take, control of our individual selves. Thing is, it's important to make time for yourself. What you want to do with that time, it's up to you what you want to do with it. But what we're talking about over here is taking that time and you want to do something within music and to find that, be able to turn that into something that you could, you're proud of, lead to something that you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't have to. I've talked a lot about writing and creating.
Hmm.
Sometimes for us it's just learning that piece of music that you've always wanted to. You know, I remember when I first started taking guitar lessons, I wanted to play this one particular song. And that was the end all be all. And when I could play that song, I felt so successful.
Stairway to Heaven, Led Zeppelin.
No, Lightning Crashes by Live.
Completely other side.
Yep, totally the other side.
Totally other side. But that's cool though. The first song that I learned on guitar, which to be honest, I can't stand it, is America. Horse with No Name. I hate that song.
Oh, yeah.
I hate that because it was the first song I ever learned, and it was just bad memories. I just don't go there. But yeah, that was my song. Oh.
Yeah. No, I still like that song. My song, I still like my
You're
song.
lucky. You got to keep the song that you love. The song that I liked is crushed and gone. It's a great song, unfortunately, but yeah.
Now, piano, that was a different story. The last big piece I learned in college was a very complicated Schumann piece, and I hate that
Whoa.
song. Hated it. When I
Whoa.
got done, I was like, done, done.
Oh my god. You couldn't have picked something, I don't know, like Paul McCartney? That would have been a little easier.
It would have been, but I wanted to prove I could play a true classical piece of music
Wow.
properly. And I learned, and then I said, "I'm done. No more classical for me." I grew up in the classical world. I was a
Okay.
ballerina. I was in musical theater.
Okay.
I went
This
I went
explains a lot. Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
and
This is
then I
making
got
sense.
and then I got to college, and I started going to rock concerts, and I was like, "This is cool. I would rather do this." And so I learned, I my college had a music business program. So my actual degree is music business with an emphasis on voice. So
Nice.
I learned how to live the rock and roll world, and I liked it so much better.
It is a lot of fun. I mean, God, you take somebody like what's his face? The one from Mick Jagger. You know the guy like is I think in his 70s. He's healthier than me.
Yeah.
Oh, it's crazy. But like I can't even so you actually like worked in the rock and roll. How long were you working in the rock and roll scene?
I I did when I was in college. So this is my path as to how I got to where I was. When I was in college, I studied music business, and I spent time learning. Like, I learned how to do radio. I learned how to make commercials. I learned how to write music that was, for specific things. And then at that time in Atlanta, music was huge. It was the late '90s.
It's
The
coming back
music
now with the
scene.
underground scene. It's crazy.
Yeah, it was huge in Atlanta. So I did a lot of just a little bit of this and a little bit of that kind of stuff until I figured out I was offered a job actually at the Atlanta Opera in their
Okay.
development office, which is not rock and roll, but it was one of my internships that I had to do for college. And I realized that I didn't want to be there anymore. So I went to work for a company that's actually a competitor of mine now, that offered lessons, but they were mostly a music store. So I went to work for them for a little while, and I did some like management stuff on the side, and then eventually I got my store.
Wow.
My
So you basically you got yourself in, you kind of explored, you took opportunities and you built yourself from there. Like kind of being able to broaden yourself, not just to like one direction, like, oh, okay, let me try this. Let me see where this is going to lead me.
No, absolutely, and that was how I made a lot of connections, and I learned a lot about the industry. Was simply when somebody would say, "Hey, we've got this concert coming up, and we need somebody to basically run errands for the sound guy," and I'd be like, "That's me. I'll do that." So I learned a lot about live sound production and live lighting production and things like that, just because I was willing to learn and I was willing to give my time.
Right. Yeah. And I find it so, sorry. I find it so cool and kind of amazing to just have that strength and ability to, go out there, put yourself out there. I'm the total opposite. I'm like the bat in the closet. Like, don't touch me, leave me alone. I'll call you when I want to call you. But like, I'm joking, but it's a really great skill to have just straight off the bat. Just that ability to just be like, this is what I want to do. I'm going to take, this is where I'm going and I want to see where it's going to lead me.
And it's interesting when I tell my students these stories and I say this is how you make that connection is you meet the sound guy and you remember his name and remember it the next time and thank him for his time. And when somebody needs help, you give of your time. That's not natural to me. I'm I get a lot of energy from being in crowds, but I'm really a little introverted. So for me to put myself out there and say, "Hey, pick me," is really not comfortable for me. But that's what I had to do to get to where I am today.
You don't strike me as that kind of person, but I believe you. It's kind of, I don't know, maybe that is a thing. Maybe being somebody that's more introverted and not extroverted can add some benefit because there's more of strength and ability, to put yourself out there because like you're like, nah, no, but I want to do this.
It's a decision. You have to
Yeah,
decide, "This is what I want to do." It doesn't come naturally, so you have to work for it a little bit.
right. It all like it all feels so strange in a way because you I don't know how for like how long you've had this school, but you yourself watching all of these people come in and out, new people coming in, people trying different things. I mean, just having that those kind of like that roll of memories going by, throughout the years, just as people walk through the doors and people go out.
It's we've been doing this for 21 years. This is our
Yeah, that's a
21st
long
year.
time.
We started when I was very young. Please don't date me too much on that, but, I was we were I think I was 23 maybe when we started this,
So
20
2002. Yeah, so this is 2002.
2002, 2003, yeah, that's
Yeah.
2002 is when we started, yes. 2002 is when we started. I look back now and it's amazing 'cause I see kids of people that I taught, that they're sending their children here, and
Damn. That's
it's
wild. That's
the first time
wild.
I realized that I had a student who wasn't born when the store opened, it blew my mind. Like, the fact that, like, and now, like I said, now I have kids of people who were here before, and here
Crazy.
they're continuing the legacy of what we do. Is it just it's mind-boggling.
It's just so crazy to even realize just the generations of creativity being passed on. Just realizing again, yeah, there's great celebrities out here, there's great music. But I think the coolest thing is when those passions and creativities are passed on to the next. Like I can tell you this straight up. My sister inspired me to be an artist. My sister's an artist. And from her, I, took from that creativity and I was like, I wanted to do this, because I was like inspired by my big sister. Inspiration, creativity comes from so many different places. But when you talk about generations, come on.
Yeah, it's pretty spectacular, and to see, we have kids who play music with their parents now. I mean, that's pretty cool to see that happen, you know?
It's like also kind of the environment now that doesn't get spread light on is where you have more parents now because of who they are. These are people that are millennials. Some
Mhm.
of these are early millennials, and they're having kids, and they were able to get inspired because hello, somebody opened up a shop, in 2002, and be able to pass it on to now to this generation. It just goes to show you that even with trauma and problems that existed 20, 40, 50 years ago, the fact that you have people that are creating families for themselves, building themselves in their community, and even more than that, they're able to see how they were able to change for themselves and be able to give that to their kids as they're growing up.
Yes, absolutely. I know my sister probably is terrified that I'm going to influence my nieces. I don't have any children of my own, but my sister, has 2 daughters, and one of them loves what we do so much up here that they drive up for a week every year to come to summer camp with us. And so my sister, who's an engineer, is probably lives in absolute fear that I'm gonna inspire those girls a little too much one day.
There's nothing wrong with strumming a guitar,
No,
especially when you got s'mores roasting on the campfire.
absolutely not. That is the way life should be, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, you could still be the thing is you could still be a doctor or an engineer or a programmer and still play an instrument. I know plenty of programmers that are play instruments like drums and guitars, and yeah, they sit on computers the whole day and sit there creating programs and stuff, but they like doing that too. It doesn't always have to be a profession. I like this the attitude of like, oh my god, this is going to be my life. No, it doesn't have to be. If you want it
No,
to, it can.
no, just because I choose to make music my life, for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I'm surrounded by music and musicians and artists and performers and all of that. That's my choice. That's what I choose to do, and I love what I do. I have the best job ever. That doesn't mean that I couldn't choose to do it on the weekends and have a regular 9 to 5 during the week. Like, there's nothing, it doesn't make one choice better than the other, they're just choices.
Right. It's also learning to be able to develop yourself as an artist and understanding who you want to be as a person. Thing about developing is takes time, just like evolution takes time. As like not even that, it's just as time progresses, as we get older, as we get
Sure.
wiser, we we learn from our experiences, we learn from our memories, we learn from the people that are around us.
No, absolutely, and I can tell you my experience was I was convinced I was gonna be an attorney when I was a junior in high school, and then I got to my senior year of high school, and the idea of not making music made me absolutely terrified, and I switched, and I decided to be a music major in college, and would never go back. I'm so grateful that I made that decision, but it took some experience, and it took that acknowledgement that it was more important to me than anything else before I could make that decision.
It's like that hunger. It's a feeling inside of you that you have to do this. This is what you need to do. And
Yes.
it's just a feeling, and sometimes people are like, "What the hell are you doing? What are you doing?" But you know
Yes.
it's right. You know for yourself that it's right.
Yes. And I tell my parents too, when we're doing the college thing and helping kids get ready for those college application process, and I have parents that come to me and they're like, "Oh my god, my son wants to be a guitar player and he wants to go to school and study guitar, and that just makes me scared." And I said, "There's a lot of ways to make money as a guitar player. They can make a living. Let them do what they're passionate about."
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as a guitarist, there are plenty of things you can do. You can, for example, be a hire-in. So hire-in means is that you can get hired by a club that will actually give you tips, believe it or not. And you'll come in for 2 or 3, 4 hours. You make your salary, you go home, you do that the next night. There are a lot of options for instrumentalists, especially now. There's so many clubs that are open. I'm out here in Fort Lauderdale. They have tons of stuff all the time. Like, I feel it's such a silly superstition that people have where you can't be successful as an artist, so stop dreaming. I don't think that's true.
I think you can be. I think you do need to be a little smart about the way you do it. I do encourage my kids who want to do that. I do encourage them to study music business, get a little bit of business degree behind you so you can manage yourself. But there's the world is open. You just have to find where that dream works and make it happen.
Right. Really be able to connect to it as well. Just be able to find yourself with it. Sometimes that's what it does. It just helps you find your compass, find your true north.
No, you're right. And because maybe you start out thinking, I want to be a guitar player in a band. And then you realize, you know what? I really like music and I really like playing, but playing in, the orchestra for a musical is just as cool and I like it a little bit more. And or being a great guitar player and figuring out how to be a great guitar tech, touring with a national tour. Because all of those guitar players have guitar techs. They all have drum techs. There's so many jobs out there in this industry, and sometimes you just have to think out of the box to find the one that's right for you.
Right. Make yourself the opportunities. Don't limit yourself.
Exactly.
I have to firstly say, I mean, it's a pleasure and always an honor to have the opportunity to interview people, but especially being that this is an artist podcast, to have somebody that literally teaches people, allows people the opportunity to be a part of it is just incredible. It's one of those rare opportunities that doesn't necessarily get looked upon very often, I feel.
Well, I appreciate you having me on this. It's been a fun conversation.
Of course. It's my pleasure. And anybody that's curious, wants to learn more about the work that you're doing, where can they find you?
You can find us at musicauthorityinc.com, or you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Music Authority.
Awesome. And be sure to like and subscribe. Be sure to check out Melissa's work. I mean, I'm absolutely blown away. And if you want to learn more about the podcast, you can find us on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at Lost in the Groove Pod. So with that, catch you on the next one. Stay groovy or whatever. Just stay out of trouble. Catch you in the next one. Bye, everybody.